perfectly
And
fine.
I don't need any notes and stuff.
Okay.
You can keep your own. Or...
Works for me.
Okay.
Just so you know, Gabe, I might have to jump out. I've got a picture that I have to do with Bank North, but
okay.
Go ahead.
So, firstly, I kind of just wanted to mention why I am here and coaching and doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I have no hidden agenda of like whatever it would be, that would be. I just have a passion for wrestling, and I think it's a good opportunity for kids. I know what wrestling can do for kids, and I see how it can help them even out into their lives. So that's why I'm here, in general, coaching wrestling. Secondly, I just wanted some more, and we kind of emailed about it a little bit, just about what prompted the initial meeting. If that, if it was part of my evaluation or wasn't, that was kind of the question too I had when I asked you about in that meeting, is this my evaluation? And I was told, well, no, you'll meet with Bryce later for your evaluation. But then I was told it is my evaluation, just what that whole process is.
That wasn't as clear and needed to be. So like I tell everyone, everything is part of your evaluation. So, and what I mean by that is like, when Bryce, I take notes on our administrators all the time. And so like when I get to the final part of the year and I write it up, like if Bryce I might say, hey, you interacted with this coach in the fall. And he's like, oh, really? Like everything's part of that. So like when we sit down and we're having conversations, that's part of the evaluation process. Your formal final thing that goes in your file will be done with Bryce. But like, so if you came up there and I was standing in the hallway and you shoved a kid down, you're not going to do that. But let's say that I'm going to look at that and say, okay, that's going to be something I'm going to use in the evaluation process. So like anything you're doing in the building as a coach, working with administration, parents, that's always fair game to be included in that. But what I should have made clear is Bryce is still the one when it comes to signing off and going through the final thing that will go in your file. That's Bryce.
Okay.
So that conversation was more concerns that I had to make sure that like we could be on the same page coming in this next year.
Yeah.
So that was more of that, and I could have been more clear on that.
Okay, so then last year we had just the evaluation with Bryce, but then this year there's this extra meeting. Was there specific things that prompted that?
Yeah, I think some of the stuff we shared in there, I mean, that I think they shared on the Hubdenness thing, like that came across our desk about the tape. And you explained that, but that came across our desk. We had some concerns, and this won't shock you, from our athletic trainer. And so they brought some of that across our desk. We had board members, and you had visited with some of them. Again, we talked through that too, but they had raised some concerns. So like, because of those things, I had concerns, and a lot of times I won't step in. I mean, I will say, Bryce, you take care of that. In this one, knowing that we're a young program, I wanted to make sure we're going to be on the same page going forward. So one, the school district still supports it, so we believe you're the right person for it. So that was the extra meeting. One of the things Bryce and I talked about is, if we had concerns, we probably should have sat down earlier and not waited till the end of the year to just do it in real time. But sometimes we want you to be able to just coach and not have to worry about some of those things, unless they're egregious. But I think we probably created more worry about things when we could have just sat down and had the conversations. The extra meeting was because of me, like concerns I had from being involved in some of the other conversations.
So there were board members that had concerns about
how
things are operating in wrestling?
Yeah, so we had, you had talked with Brad, and then there were some other board members that came and say, hey, I'm hearing some complaints and some that you had brought to Brad, but also some other board members that came to me and said, hey, I'm worried a little bit. That happens all the time. So you need to understand that, that is a very common experience. And so I just take all that. If I get it from multiple sources throughout a year, I typically am going to sit down with them and just make sure that we feel like our values are aligning. And I've done that before. Like this year, it was only wrestling, but I can tell you, I've done it with almost every sport, where if I get it here enough, I want to just make sure that we feel comfortable going forward. And again, I trust Bryce on that, but we have conversations throughout every season to say, is that something you need me to come in and have a conversation about?
Yeah. So when you talk about, we wanted you just to be able to coach wrestling, I agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff being a coach that I didn't expect or know how much there would be more time spent in non-wrestling things than there is just coaching wrestling. Especially even these meetings like this, it's a lot of time and thought that goes into this and what's going to happen. And ultimately, I'd rather have less of this, and I would like to get along and do better, and we all just can have a successful wrestling program. So I'm on board with that. But going forward, other things that I just wanted to clarify from last meeting.
Yeah.
One of the things that really kind of stuck with me was when it was brought up about me being disrespectful towards the AD and the wrestling team in general, having more of a disrespect towards you, and that starting at the top is what I was told, which would be me. So I was just looking for specific examples of the disrespect or what you noticed, and not necessarily like questioning a decision or challenging wanting to talk about things, but whether it was in a text or an email or what I had done.
A couple of things were the music being played. The day that you played the music during the national anthem, I had already gone up and asked you to turn it down, and not 10 minutes later you cranked it up even higher, and then you kept. No, you did. I know for a fact you did, and everybody in the gym noticed it. That was, in my opinion, direct disrespect. The other example was the senior wrestling signs.
Yeah.
The kids were going back and forth asking for them. It hadn't even crossed my mind to do it, which I can take responsibility for that. But when the season was over, they said they wanted them. They didn't even take them. So that I felt was disrespectful. And then the other part that I feel is disrespectful when I say, hey, I'm going to email this coach or this AD and figure something out how we're going to reschedule or schedule, and then you go and do it before I do it. That, in my opinion, is disrespectful. So
Okay.
those are kind of my examples.
So the national anthem thing, we didn't realize the national anthem was going. Immediately after that, I apologized to you. I apologized to Doug Marjoram, who was there, and Krista. That was not, blatantly on purpose playing the music during the national anthem.
I know that, but that's not even the whole point that I said. I said, can you turn the music down? I walked back out, and you turned it back up even louder than it was before.
We never had it louder than we had. Okay. We didn't do that.
Yes.
Secondly, what was the second point?
You did. There was other people in the gym that said the same thing.
The senior picture thing's up on the wall. That has nothing to do with me. Gage asked you about him. You teased him, made fun of him. I think you acknowledged that and apologized to him.
Yes,
okay, a comment. How does that lead to me causing that disrespect? When you make the comment to the learner, the kid, that's you making that comment about why are we going to put those up or whatever you said. I don't know what you said. But he felt bad about it and asked me about it. We're not going to get our pictures up. I don't know how I'm leading to that or how I'm involved in that process there.
I don't think that's the part. I think the part that we want our head coaches to do, and this probably isn't something that you're aware of, but like when we take those, and it's an investment. I mean, they're not cheap.
$80.
Yeah. So to tell kids like, hey, you need to take these.
Yeah.
Like, be respectful. Take them home. Like, so at the end of the season to say like, these school did this. They bought these for you. You need to take these home, or work with parents to get them to take them home. It feels disrespectful, and it just feels disrespectful, like, we didn't really care about that. And that doesn't mean you meant to do that, Gabe. But like all of our other coaches are like, they all have a plan to get those home. They make sure kids take them. They make sure they're
I wasn't aware of that.
No, and that's why I said, like, you may not have even known that because that was something new. So I think like that's an easy correctable thing, is to sit there and say, listen, we'll make sure Bryce knows he's got to get them ready for the start of the season. So when we start our wrestling season, we will have them up. But then those kids know, like, the school invested. What's the plan to take them home and not throw them in the back of your car? I mean, honestly, what most kids do is they put them up at their graduation party.
Yeah.
And then they might throw them, and I don't care after
If
that.
I would have known they didn't take them and you're going to throw them in the garbage, I probably would have reached out to them and said, hey, you guys should take your posters.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was
idea.
more that part of, like, we went through, we did that, and then they kind of just said, so whether or not it was you, which I don't believe it was, it's always going to reflect. It's the same thing.
Right.
Like, I'll tell people, I'll get
I
calls.
need to be aware of that, though.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, I'll get a call from Fargo, and this is true. I'll get a call from Fargo and say, hey, you had a group of teachers, and I have this last year. You had a bunch of teachers that were at a bar, and they were acting ridiculous. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? And they're like, well, that's a reflection of your leadership. I don't think it was, but I said, okay, I got it. But also, if I have to know that, just like you. So
Yeah.
like we had an error on that part, but I think that's one that will be corrected.
Yeah.
So like, but when you're asking, like, that felt like the kids were like, screw you. Like, and so again, felt doesn't mean it was, but felt. So.
Another thing, if Gage is one of the people, I know we talked about this last year at some point with you, when he must have asked at some point, he told us about the story about having a home duel last year. And then he got told by you, well, it's not like anybody would come anyways.
That's 100% not true.
We talked about it.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't there. He just mentioned the comment to us. So.
Yeah, I don't think that, I mean, I wouldn't believe that was what was said. But again, I can't prove
I wasn't there either, but that's just comments that happens. And other like, I don't know what your relationship has been like in the last year with, say, Will Treewasser. I assume it's improved.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's for everybody in this building.
Right. So, and I'm not taking 100% credit for it, but I would say since wrestling came along, his attitude and his respect and everything in school has improved.
Oh, there's no doubt.
So the statement of wrestling is so disrespectful starts at the top. I don't think that is an accurate or a fair assessment of how I operate with people.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay.
I just wanted to clear that up because
No,
I'm not looking to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
I can recognize that I'm not the most friendly. I don't make a bunch of small talk.
Well, that's the same for all three of us.
I was going to say that.
We're all the same.
We're all identical with that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
But at the same time, like, I don't feel like I'm disrespectful. So that comment stuck with me last time.
And I get that. And I think it's important to also remember disrespect is always from the receiver, right? Like, so if we have a conversation, I feel like you're being disrespectful. Like, same with Bryce. If Bryce walks out and thinks I'm being disrespectful, it's always the receiver. And so this is the point, to clear the air and say, like, all right, this is how I felt. And then us say, okay, got it. Like, we need to make sure then that if we're feeling that way in the time, we say, hey, that felt disrespectful. Tell me why you did that. And you're like, oh, this is why. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I think when we get to the end of the year and we do that, then it gets bigger. Because I think, and one of the things like Bryce mentioned was calling other coaches. I think we got that figured out last meeting.
Well, I was going to comment on that too. So you could ask us to reach out to these coaches to see if they could come because we had lost Pembina County, right? So can you find Jamestown? Can you find West Fargo? Can we find Davies? So I was reaching out to the coaches to get them to come. And then when we had the skin stuff, we weren't going to have many wrestlers. We didn't know the guys we had, if they had a skin problem. I wanted to reach out to the coach whose wrestlers were going to be wrestling and say, hey, here's the situation. Do you guys still want to come?
As long as you tell Bryce in the future, fine. We just need to know.
The problem was with that situation is we had just talked on the phone and said, I will call their AD.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion.
And I'd been talking to Jonathan or Coach Magnell.
So again, when we come out of the meeting, whoever's going to call calls. But like it makes us look bad if Bryce calls and they're like, oh, we already talked about this. It just makes us look like we don't know what we're doing. Same thing, like if Bryce calls and you say, I'm going to call, and then Bryce calls, it's going to same thing. They're like, well, your AD called, why are you calling? So when we come out of those meetings and like a skin thing happens and you want to call the coach, just tell Bryce. Like I don't think we care I don't care one way or the other, and I know Bryce doesn't care. So we just have to be crystal clear on who's calling. So we're not doing it twice. Because it does look bad. Like, and that it just tells us that we're not communicating well enough among each other. And so I don't care who calls. Doesn't matter. If you want to reach out to places to try to find a team to wrestle, just tell Bryce. Like I don't care one bit on that. But we just have to communicate who's doing what and make sure one person does it. Because that's a common thing in schools all over the place. Like, and even as that, like Bryce will say, hey, I'll take care of this. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I send an email, and Travis Lamar will say, and this isn't just wrestling, this is anything. And Travis Lamar say, well, Bryce already talked to me about that. Like, I said that. Mm-hmm. So, like, just trying not to duplicate efforts.
Okay. Next thing I wanted to ask about was, at the last meeting, kind of got brought up that, if I ask for something, if I don't get what I want, I go to the next person and keep asking. So I went back through and looked at some old texts, emails of things that kind of were not necessarily, you don't get told yes right away. So there was some back and forth about, hey, I think we need this. And then it ended up going from one person to the next in the chain of command. So I wanted to go through some of those and just have you give me your thoughts on if they were reasonable things to, keep questioning, keep advocating for the program.
Mm-hmm.
First one would be the first time, there's only 2 times that I ever talked to a school board member, just for the record. The first time was last year at the end of the season when I had emailed Paige and said, hey, I didn't remember seeing any payment for coaching come through. When I didn't get paid last year for coaching varsity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And she must have got Bryce involved and said, oh, no, you volunteered. They got you involved. Said, no, it was our understanding you volunteered. So at that point,
I thought we both said
we
you'd
both
get paid
we
right
both
away.
said you're getting paid.
no.
Yeah.
That's
I looked through the emails.
well that
So at that point,
yeah, and that's fine on that one but I mean when they asked,
We both came in.
we both came in. I can remember the conversation. We both came in and said like, well, no, like he volunteered with when we started the elementary program, but like we right away said you had to get paid.
oh, what?
In that meeting, I'll guarantee.
I don't know
stake
if that
my
got
career
sent to
on
me,
it.
but it was.
And it maybe didn't get sent.
And
to
if
you.
it didn't, then going to the board and that would be an acceptable one because
Okay.
they are the
Yes.
ones. So yes, that
So that
would
was
be
the
100%
first time I
fine.
ever went to the board.
Yeah, that
Second
one is
time-
a gift. That's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Second time was, and the only other time was this last year at the end of the season with the issues that were going on with the trainer. Because I had, what kind of prompted that was, and that wasn't necessarily me as a head coach. I had more concerns about that as a parent. If it were to, if I was in that situation as a parent, and I was told that the athletic trainer here overrides my kid's doctor, I didn't agree with that. And that's what I was told in the meeting when you and Hannah were there. And that wasn't okay with me. I still don't agree with it. And I don't know how it's going to all play out, but I would still challenge that.
And
So then I ended up going to Brad.
And I think that,
After we had emails too.
Yeah, when the trainer at an event, like she overrides anybody that's here at an event.
Yep.
And I think we were talking about all of that in one conversation. And I know like with Hannah, so I can't remember who it was halfway through that skin stuff. They had gone to see a doctor in Fargo and they had been put on, they're out 10, 12 days or whatever it says, or till the lesion is scabbed over. And Hannah had not cleared that person because they had an open lesion, and then they had talked to their doctor who just faxed out a...
Yeah, that was Will. They didn't see him.
Right, they didn't even see him. They
Yeah, we
just
were talking
faxed
about
it.
Will at
Yeah.
that situation though. It was
Okay.
Gage.
Okay.
That's the one we were talking about at the time.
And we found a way to Gage to be able to wrestle anyways,
Yeah.
right? So I mean...
But I was still being told, no, she overrides the doctor. And if that's how things were going to be going forward, like it wasn't just about that situation at that time, because this is bound to come up again.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just...
I think we're gonna sit down with... We have a meeting
Well,
with
we have a
Essentia
meeting today at noon with Essentia, and this is one of our topics for
It's
discussion.
just how
we're gonna rewrite our policy around who has control over that and what can the athletic trainer decide and not decide, so we can put a policy in. Because we heard it not just from Yuki, we heard it from other people, and Hannah's trying to be safe, and I'll always respect the fact that she's doing that, but we have to figure out if the doctor can override or what that is. So we're gonna figure that out. That's our policy we're working on right now.
So the only other time I went to the school board was that time.
Yeah.
Reasonable, unreasonable? No?
Not really.
Just leave it 11.
And I
Well,
think-
not let it go, but like, I think the question then is like you sit down and say like, okay, this is a problem. What can be done going in the future? Because we had been made aware, and we said, all right, yeah. I mean, we've been working since the skin thing with Essentia to set it up. We went through policies of other districts. Like we have a plan to say like this has to get addressed next year because skin's a different story. So we've been working on that. If you want to bring it up, like I can't ever tell you not to go to the board. That is your choice. But if you're going to go to the board and say, if you're going to go as a parent, tell them you're going as a parent. If you're going as a coach, tell them you're going as a coach. Because as a parent, you have that right anytime, every time. And as a coach, you can do it too. But like, for us, it was going to take time because this will come back and tell August with our board policy changes.
And that was a tough situation too, because it was at the end of the year.
Correct.
And we were risking, these guys
Yep.
not being able to compete
Yep. That's why
postseason.
we're gonna address it and adjust it for the skin piece. We have to, and we know that. And again, I think that was a learning experience for us. And frankly, we don't want to be involved in that discussion. Like, I don't want to have to make decisions on a kid's skin because I don't know if it's acne or herpes. Like, I have no clue.
And even on the sheet from the High School Activity Association, if you read the back of it, how they came up with the guidelines, they're essentially just guidelines.
Yeah.
They don't have to exactly meet all those criteria. Their doctor can decide against what's listed out for those criteria if they want to return to play. So.
And then, but they would have to, the trainer at the event has even if their doctor passed them, the trainer can still say no.
Yeah, I was never challenged.
Yeah.
Is that's true though?
Yeah.
Like at an event before they go.
Well,
even if their doctor said you're clear, and then they go to an event in Central Cass, they say no way.
They cannot let you compete in their event.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, like in my mind, perfectly fine. I mean, unless we know, like, hey, this kid just got diagnosed on Tuesday. I mean, then it's our job to keep him out for the amount of time that says. So I mean, in those instances, they're great in terms of like, do you go to the one on the board on the pay? Absolutely. I would have done the same thing, but I will tell you, staking my career on it, that is 100%. Not the conversation we had about that.
I remember walking in and saying, Gabe was getting paid for wrestling. He looked at me and goes, yes.
Yeah.
And I said, that's what I thought too.
So we should have pushed that out to you right away. I apologize on that part. The other one, I mean, I think those are one of the ones where I think if we sit down and we talked about it, if we don't do things through email and text, that's something that wouldn't have had to probably go up to a board member because we would have said like, oh, here's the stuff we need to take. Who can we talk with? Gabe, talk to 2 or 3 other coaches. What does their school do? So I think like sitting down and have a conversation and not through text and email like we talked about, that'll solve those kind of things. I don't think that'll be an issue. And then for Bryce and I, and for you, it won't be you questioning us. It'll be us having a conversation and informing us and truly understanding why you feel that way. Yeah. Because like that's in an email, I can't figure that out. And you know that, like, I mean, you can't figure out concept. And for me, my personality is I look at email and I do read tone into it, and I shouldn't. So.
Yeah. And then the other couple ones where we had kind of gone back and forth was the camp shirts, paying for 20 extra camp shirts. Remember that? Wrestling had to pay for 50 shirts, and we only had 30 people. I was going back and forth. No, you got to pay for these shirts. So I ended up. Got involved.
What do we do with the?
You changed it.
Yeah. So
But I don't know if stuff like that is looked at as me being difficult or questioning.
No,
things.
that wasn't difficult. That was I mean, I think what they had done is ordered. I don't remember. What Paige was doing is she split it among all sports, and we've done that before.
That's how we've always
done
it.
That's what I was told.
It was. I mean, we've always done that when we buy shirts as a group. We just split it among the groups, but it's just another piece of work for her. But she was okay with that. Yeah. So we'll be fine just charging out the amount of shirts you have. So that's not you being difficult. Yeah. That was we literally just had never had anybody ask us.
And we always order extras too. So.
Yeah. And then went back and forth on the overnight stays in the hotel, where I got told wrestling club pays for the stay. That
was the first year of wrestling that.
Yeah. And that got changed.
Yeah.
But my question is, I had to advocate for it a little bit and question and come and talk to extra people, and that happens on all these things. Eventually, I did get my way, however you want to put it, but is it reasonable for me to challenge these things and ask questions about them?
Yeah, and we've never had anybody stay in Lisbon before overnight.
No, so that when Bryce came to me, I was like, Lisbon, are you kidding me? Well, then you had said, okay, well, we need to be there by there. I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. So, like, typically, like, if somebody asked, I'd be like, no, absolutely not. We're not going to spend money to stay in a hotel, but that was a different story. So sometimes from my perspective in Bryce's is we don't know. And so, like, if we can have those conversations, if you have somebody that goes to the coaches meeting and said, listen, we want to stay in Lisbon, here's the reasons why, then, like, we have more information. I think what happens sometimes is we get it, and then we make a decision, and then it's like more information comes. I need that on the front side.
Yes.
Like, we just need to have that information on the front part. If we do that, and we have those meetings and we have conversations, I think it becomes pretty seamless. Now we know, hey, we're gonna go down to Lisbon, probably staying that night. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I think some of this is just starting to create a tradition of how we do things in wrestling that we've never had.
Well, the one that we kind of went back and forth on was the heat on the stage. And I had to kind of question again when we were told that Wrestling Club was going to have to pay for the heater.
Yeah.
And just, it's fine to go back and forth on one like that.
Those are things you can always question. Like, so if you question and say like, well, I really think this should be a school responsibility, then I'm going to look at it and dig in. I might say, no, it's not. It's not a school responsibility. You don't need it. If it's 55, it's 55. But to ask that of like, why, like, that's okay. I don't ever have a problem with somebody saying like, can you tell me why that is? Why did you make that decision? That I'm fine with. If then I say like, no, then it's done. Then I'm not gonna go back. Now, if you say, hey, this is serious enough, I'd like to have a conversation face to face, then I'll know it's important. We'll meet face to face. So questioning it's fine. Like if we get to a point like after 25 times, I'm not doing that. So like the heater thing, and then we've got the big heater going in this summer.
Yeah.
So I mean, it should fix the issue. We will not, so you're aware, the wall won't get put in. So it was $38,000, and our walk-in fridge has went out, and that's $34,000. So we'll hopefully in the year down the road, and I don't think you want to use it. And that's an example of that would be a want, not a need. Right. And you had told me, I remember when you and I talked, you said, in Stanley, we may do it just going on the stage, and it's not perfect. So, and I don't think you want to put your fundraising money towards a $38,000 wall.
No, I think like why that account stays so high is I anticipate getting another mat at some point.
No, I agree. So I think like that doesn't make sense. So like those kind of things, like if you say, why? No, I really believe in the wall. I'm saying, great. No, like that's just too big of a price tag. So we can always have conversations. Always. Like always.
Well, so part of the reason I bring these up is because last meeting was kind of told that, I need to work better with you all, and I was just kind of looking at, well, what are those instances where I wasn't working well? Like these are the things that I look back and found that I was kind of asking questions, advocating for wrestling, and that we went back and forth. They caused some more time and conversation. So what are those things is there things that I'm asking for or doing that, I should have just, no.
Well, I don't think those are any of the things that we were talking about. I think it was more like the relationships with Hannah, myself, BSN. Those are the things that weren't. Those things, I mean, when I look from my perspective, I'm like, because I think it's your opinion that wrestling gets the short end of the stick. And I'm like, I've given everything that you've asked for, we've said yes to. Like, I don't ever remember anything saying no. So like when I think the part for me is the relationships like with BSN, with Hannah, with myself, with whatever is where I think we all can get better at.
I got to touch on the Tom from BSN too, because that was bothering me. At the last meeting, it kind of went, you brought up these people telling me the relationship with this person, with this person, with this person. And the three was Hannah and Tom and Travis, which I get to ask about him too. But with Tom, you bring up these people, it's like you're painting this picture that I'm the difficult one to work with because I'm challenging these people on how they're doing their job. With Tom, I don't regret calling him out on not doing his job because our girls we had that year and every year should have appropriate equipment and attire. When our wrestler gets sent to the locker room right before her match because she wasn't covered properly, that's embarrassing. We should never have that happen. And when we're not getting our equipment from Tom, how am I supposed to respond? What am I supposed to do? We still don't have them.
Yeah, I mean, with Tom, there's a whole bunch of different things that go into play. It's not like Tom is the only person. There's production, and it's got to go to shipping. They have to have it in stock, so Nike has to make it, or whoever has to make it. It's not just Tom. Does Tom need to do better? Yes, and I've had that conversation with Tom's boss. Yes, so I've already had that conversation. For me, in charge of the wrestling, it's a bad look for us if you're calling him and chewing him out and being disrespectful to him. which is what he said and what you kind of said happened.
I just wanted our equipment for our athletes.
So,
if they can't get it, then we got to get it somewhere. I mean, not going to go out on football field with no shoulder pads.
Yeah. Which we're fine with. Again, in that instance, work with Bryce.
We let him break the contract and get it from someplace else. So I think
bringing him up as a, something against me, kind of.
Well, not against you, Steve, because I'm telling you, when people call and say, "Hey, this happened," we're going to let people know. So it doesn't mean that you were in the wrong. I'm saying this is when they got a hold of us and said, "Hey, we had this interaction," and they felt it was disrespectful. Again, the receiver, you said you were being honest. I'm not going to disagree with that because you weren't getting what you needed. But in those instances, that's where we've got to sit down and we have one voice go there. Yeah. Because then Bryce has to call and he's talking to him and they're saying, "This is happening." So Bryce is like, "Hey, this happened." Now it adds another layer that maybe we could have got avoided in the front side.
Yeah. If there's something with BSN, just let me know. Like if you're, hey, a sweatshirt didn't show up, you can let him know. But then if it goes past that, just let me know. I didn't even know that the jerseys didn't come in until you had told me.
So then at that point, if it gets to be, like 5, 6, 7 times I'm texting you, "Hey, we still don't have these, we still don't have these, we still don't have these." That's fine.
Yeah. Yep.
100%.
Then I need to know. Yeah, that's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Yes. Because we had a problem with
them.
our baseball order just came back and there was stuff missing, so Sam came in and this is part of the the hard part about you not being in the building. Sam can walk over to me and be like, "Hey, some of our baseball stuff didn't come in." I said, "Okay, text Tom, ask him what's up." And he texted him, said, "Yep, there was 2 shipping, 1 didn't get on the truck or whatever that went out. It'll be there today or tomorrow or on Monday." So I want to know all that stuff so I can talk to, and we've had.
I'm sure we talked about the girls' singlets at some point.
I do remember talking about them before, but I didn't know that they never came.
Yeah, well, he thought they sent them, and then they were supposed to get here right before state, but the ones they sent were cut just the same as the boys.
They were wrong. So so I mean, again, there's just an example of it's a communication thing. If you can let us know, and let Bryce know, let him first start, and be in the room. Like that's the other thing too, and we'll do a lot of coaches, jump on the phone together. Yeah. And so you can express your side and then Bryce can hear what you're saying too. Like we do that as well. I mean, we'll jump on a phone and get a hold of a parent and so they're hearing it, and so even that is something that we can do.
And then Travis, I just wasn't real sure why he got brought up last time.
Well, I brought that up from my perspective. I tell people I'm a big fan of Travis Lamar. I like what he does in wrestling. I like what he does there. So I use him as a little bit of a standard of how do you get along with the guy? And it doesn't mean good nor bad, but that's a personal thing for me from working with Travis for 10 years. Yeah. Same thing when I've asked Bryce that same thing when Derek Pope was here, when John O'Day, I was always like, "Tell me how you're working with Travis." And again, you might have a different feel from the wrestling side. I have a
I'll let you know my stance with Travis. I get along with him fine. I think I mentioned last time he's not the first guy I'm going to go to for advice. And that comes after when I was wanting to get this wrestling going for high school. I called a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I called him. I even reached out to O'Day, our past ADs. I reached out to Coach Kish at NDSU, just getting all the information I could. And when I talked to Travis, one thing he told me, he wasn't real helpful. He told me he didn't think we would ever have a program at Northern Cass. Mm-hmm. So after he told me that, he's not the person I go to anymore. But when I see him, we get along. Yeah. So I was just curious if there was something going on there.
That is purely, no, I've never had a call or anything. I just simply ask that. I have certain coaches, when I'm, because I do Bryce's eval, and I'll have a conversation with other coaches, say, "How do you get along with them?" "I get along with them great." And I'll ask 2 or 3, and if all of a sudden 3 say, "I don't get along very well," then I'm going to have a conversation and say, "Well, what's going on with that?" So it's just one of the things that I will do from my position, trying to get a feel for how people are working together out there. So nothing that we got to call on.
Okay. One other thing I just thought of, talking about, communication and all being involved. And we talked about it last time, but I'd like to be more involved when conversations about wrestling happen. And the one specific time I can think of is when I came in and Hannah and you were meeting about who can travel with wrestling and who can't, who's in, who's out. and it was just you two meeting there. Like I should be involved in conversations similar to that happened with wrestling. I get it, it's not as easy since I'm not here, but somehow involved, whether it's met with Hannah, this is what we talked about as far as skin or whatever is going on. What do you think? Do you agree with this?
I think that'll come with our new policy.
Oh.
I mean, that's our plan, is to figure out, like, when we have a skin condition, then what are the lines that, okay, notify the coach, notify parents. Like, I think that's what's gonna come from when we're working with Essentia to try to figure that out.
And a lot of those Hannah's just kind of coming into my room telling me what updates on everybody. It's not like we have a set meeting or anything, and then I would share it with you right afterwards.
So I think we can.
To be honest, the less that I have to do with the program just kind of runs itself, the better. I'm not trying to be in any conversations about that, but you know, when Hannah says something, I don't know the skin stuff, so I'm gonna believe her. That's her, you know, that's her job. So I trust what she says.
Yeah.
Last thing was the schedule with the home duels. So I know we talked about, well, I wanted after last year Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's kind of a standard days for wrestling. And sounds like there's not a whole lot of days available.
I thought
We already changed both.
Did we get them both?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get notified. What's the second one or the early one?
I thought you had said that in the last meeting.
Yeah, we did.
We set up the January 23rd one.
We
I didn't
said,
know about the other one.
yeah, we had said in that meeting December 5th or
December
7th, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember saying that in the meeting.
So that's
that was confirmed. Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry if we didn't do that. I thought that, but yeah, they're both changed. So they're.
And going forward, like
We'll
year
just
to year,
hold
those
dates.
Yeah.
Those will
two
be
home
should be
matches
able
is
to.
those will be corresponding
acceptable.
dates. Yeah. That's the part when once you can get them onto the calendar now, we can build basketball after that. We can build the music concerts away from that. So it should be like, as long as those other schools will say like, hey, yeah, we'll just do course, which 90% of them do.
Who
Wouldn't you
was
think?
coming that day? Do you remember?
Grafton and Thompson.
I know with Thompson, I will guarantee Thompson will.
Yeah.
Because being a new program too, they're going to need to have some consistency as well. So yeah, we won't put Mondays anymore, and we'll keep them on those days. So we'll build our other schedules around that.
Okay.
But 2 is, I think, a fair number, and
Yeah,
you know.
it'd be tough to have more than that, I think.
Yep. Okay.
That was pretty much all I had that I just wanted clarity on. And like I said, I want to see wrestling grow. I want it to be here long after I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can. I think it will be. I think we can work together, and I can, be better at communicating.
Yep.
But at the same time, I'm always going to advocate for wrestling.
That
The
works.
questions
That's
will
not a
come.
problem.
There's not a
As
problem.
long as we communicate on the front side and we do it face to face as much as possible, and not through like text or email, so we don't get lost in translation, I don't think we're gonna have a problem going forward. I firmly believe that.
We've sat down and talked multiple times and said that you're what's best for the wrestling kids, so that's what we're gonna try to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
so that's.
And I even had Crookston reach out to me. Botno is planning on starting a team. Reached out to me for
Advice.
info on how to
Good.
get things started, and so it's, from my perspective, it's going well.
No, we're good with that.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I gotta jump. I gotta get.
Yeah, for 1 second.
Did you get that?